The first time Dr. Calla Vance saw Reed Ashford, he was standing barefoot in the tide, pants rolled to his knees, arms outstretched toward a tangle of seaweed like it held the answer to all of life's mysteries. Calla had been on the island less than 2 hours, her suitcase barely inside her assigned dorm. She had expected scientists, labs, maybe an uncomfortable amount of fluorescent lighting, not a man who looked like he'd been carved out of sea foam and stubbornness. "Are you going to help or just judge?" Reed asked without turning, his voice low but clear over the crash of waves. Calla blinked. "I'm sorry." He finally turned, dark eyes narrowing under a tangle of damp hair. "The sea lion. It's stuck. I need a hand." She spotted the struggling creature then, its flipper tangled in the kelp. And before she could process the absurdity of her first day, she dropped her satchel and sprinted into the surf. By the time they freed the sea lion, she was soaked, cold, and strangely exhilarated. Reed hadn't said another word, just nodded and walked away. That was how she met him. No welcome, no introductions. Just a rescue, salt water, and silence. Calla had spent the past 6 years trying to make herself small. In the academic world, where every woman's voice was measured against a man's confidence, she had learned to speak only when necessary. But here, on this isolated island with only 10 researchers and more sea life than cell service, that armor felt misplaced. Her job was simple: analyze neural responses in octopuses exposed to different stimuli, part of a broader study into marine cognition. She'd expected to work alone, and mostly she did. Except Reed. He was the project's co-lead, but he rarely spoke during meetings. He spent most of his time out in the water or in the sub-basement lab where the deep-sea tanks were kept. But she felt him even when he wasn't in the room. He moved like he belonged to the island more than anyone else, like the rocks and waves were just extensions of him. And slowly, impossibly, he began to notice her. It started with quiet observations. "You shouldn't stand that close to the tidal. The crabs here aren't polite. You hold your breath when you're writing. Weird. You use lavender-scented shampoo." She would glance up, stunned. "Are you watching me?" He never answered directly, just smirked and walked away. One rainy night, Calla found herself locked out of the research wing. The keypad was soaked, malfunctioning. She stood under the awning, shivering in her hoodie, waiting for someone, anyone, to pass by. Instead, Reed appeared. He looked irritated, as always, but his eyes softened when he saw her soaked sleeves. Without a word, he took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Thanks," she said quietly. "You should carry the manual key," he muttered. "I didn't know I needed one." "You do now." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the rhythm of rain on metal. "Do you ever miss the mainland?" she asked. Reed leaned against the wall beside her, arms crossed. "No." "The ocean's quieter." Quieter than people? Quieter than regret. Something in his voice made her throat tighten. She wanted to ask what he meant. She didn't. Over the weeks, their interactions grew. Reed would bring her breakfast when she stayed too late in the lab. She'd find sticky notes with small compliments hidden among her papers. "You're the only one who triple-checks data." "I like that." They never spoke of feelings. Never acknowledged what brewed between the long glances and the near touches. But it was there. One night, during a dive, their boat engine failed. Stranded for hours under a starless sky, Calla wrapped herself in a tarp while Reed tinkered with the motor. "Ever think about leaving all this?" she asked. He didn't look up. "Not until you got here." She blinked, heart thudding. "What does that mean?" Reed finally looked up, his gaze steady. "It means I haven't felt this kind of trouble in years." "You think I'm trouble?" "I know you are." Calla swallowed. "Maybe I like being a little trouble." A beat passed. Then he kissed her. Salt, warmth, fear, and relief in a single collision. Their breath mingled, their hands unsure, but their mouths certain. It was soft, then urgent. A confession. A challenge. A promise. When they broke apart, Reed exhaled shakily. "This doesn't mean anything changes," he warned. "Of course not," she whispered, knowing everything had. They didn't talk about it again. The next day, he was distant, cold, avoided her in meetings. But late that night, she found him waiting outside her dorm, wet from the rain. "I tried to stay away," he said hoarsely. "And I failed." She let him in. That night, they didn't kiss.
Didn't speak.
They just lay beside each other, two worn-out hearts wrapped in quiet. And when she woke up to find his arms still around her, Calla realized something terrifying. She was falling, and she didn't know if Reid would catch her. The morning after Reid stayed with her, Calla expected silence, distance, regret. But he was still there, still breathing softly beside her, lashes casting shadows over his cheekbones. For a second, she let herself memorize him, the rise and fall of his chest, the scar near his temple, the quiet peace that only sleep seemed to bring him. When his eyes fluttered open, he looked at her like he wasn't sure she was real. "Morning," she whispered. He didn't say it back, just brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, then slipped out of bed and into the hallway like a secret. The rest of the day passed in a blur.
They didn't talk about it.
Not at breakfast, not in the lab. But there was a shift, unmistakable and delicate, like the island itself had noticed. At lunch, he slid a tray across the table to her. "Eat something." She smiled softly. "That's very boyfriend of you." Reid froze. Calla regretted the joke instantly. But he didn't walk away. "I'm not your boyfriend," he said, voice low. "I know, but I'm not. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't enough. But it was the most she'd ever gotten from someone who lived his life with one foot out the door. Later that week, the dive team encountered a storm while mapping the reef. Calla had begged to join, eager to test neural monitoring equipment in real conditions. Reid had hesitated, then relented. "I'll be with you the entire time," he said. "Stay close."
She did.
But the storm came faster than expected. Visibility dropped. Currents changed. She lost him. For 20 terrifying minutes, she drifted through blackness, her breathing erratic in the mask, panic clawing her throat. Then hands. Strong arms pulled her upward, into the boat, into rain and gasping air. Reid tore off her mask, shaking. "Don't ever do that again," he growled. I couldn't see." He pulled her into his chest, soaking wet and shaking. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "I've lost enough." She clung to him. "I'm here." "Yeah," he breathed. "You are." That night, when they were alone again, she finally asked, "What happened to you, Reid?" He didn't answer at first. Then, "I was married." Calla's breath caught. She was a researcher. Marine chemistry. "We met on a cruise ship science grant. Young, ambitious, stupid. We built a lab together. I thought we'd be inseparable." "What happened?" "She drowned during a dive."
I was supposed to be with her that day.
"But I was fighting with a funder. Didn't show. They said she miscalculated oxygen. But I should have been there." Calla reached for his hand. "She wouldn't want you to punish yourself forever." "I stopped letting people close after that," he whispered. "Until you." They didn't define it. But he came to her room every night now. They ate dinner together, worked side by side in the lab. When she laughed, he smiled. When he brooded, she nudged him back. It was a quiet falling, but it was real. Still, not everyone was blind. Dr. Simone, the lead coordinator, pulled Calla aside. "I hope you know what you're doing," she said curtly. "Reid isn't safe. He disappears. He self-destructs." "He's not perfect," Calla replied. "But neither am I." "He's already broken one woman," Simone warned. "Don't be next."
Calla didn't sleep well that night.
The next morning, she found a letter slipped under her door. "I'm no good at saying things out loud. But I see you, Calla. You terrify me. Because you make me want things again. I don't know how to do this. But I want to try.
R."
She read it 10 times. Then she walked to his lab and kissed him in front of everyone. For weeks, things were good. They worked, they touched, they learned each other. Reid built her a custom underwater headset for live neural tracking. She found his old wedding ring in a drawer and didn't ask questions. They spent a night camping under the stars, wrapped in one sleeping bag, trading stories. But peace doesn't last forever. One afternoon, Reid received a call. Emergency meeting. A private grant had been pulled, funds gone, equipment compromised. They had 30 days before the project shut down. Calla was devastated. This research was her life. I'll go back to Berkeley, she said. Maybe submit the data we've gathered so far. Reid shook his head.
No.
I'm taking a job in Norway. She blinked.
What?
Before all this, I'd been offered a marine preservation position. I said no, but they reached out again. She stepped back. You're leaving? I didn't expect to have something worth staying for, he said softly. Then stay for me. I can't ask you to change your plans. You're not. I'm offering. He looked at her like she was the sun, and he was drowning. I'm scared, he admitted. So am I. He took her hand. I've never had a reason to hope before. Then let's make this our reason. In the final week before shutdown, the team worked around the clock. Calla's neural data showed groundbreaking cognitive mapping, octopuses responding emotionally to environmental change. Reid helped her compile it, every night at her side. On the final day, they submitted their joint paper. As the sun set on their last official day on the island, they stood at the edge of the dock. Calla turned to him. What now? Reid didn't hesitate. We jump. Then he pulled her into the water, clothes and all, laughing against her scream. When they surfaced breathless, she kissed him. And this time, it wasn't a beginning. It was a vow. 6 months later, the island felt like a memory Calla had dreamed. Too vivid to be false, too beautiful to be real. Berkeley was colder.
Faster.
The days blurred into lectures, research applications, and overstuffed inboxes. Her paper with Reid had made waves, praised by the Journal of Marine Cognition, requested for presentation in international conferences. And yet, every time she held the glass award or spoke to a room of people in tailored suits, something inside her whispered, "This isn't where you left your heart." Reid had gone to Norway. He sent emails, sometimes long and rambling about whales, other times just 3 words, "Miss you, Calla." They weren't in a relationship, but they weren't not either. One night, as Calla sat alone in her apartment, staring at a half-eaten container of Thai food, her phone lit up. Meet me in Reykjavik? She blinked, then typed, "See." Is that a command or a question? His reply came instantly. I've made peace with my ghosts. I'm just hoping you'll give me a chance to meet yours. She booked the ticket that night. Iceland was colder than she expected. Reid met her at the airport. No grand gesture, no flowers. Just him in a wool coat, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Vance, future wife." Calla laughed so hard, she nearly cried. "You really are terrible at subtlety," she said as they hugged. He murmured against her hair, "You always bring it out of me." They spent the week exploring glacial lakes and remote villages. Each night, Reid made dinner. Burnt toast, undercooked fish, but eyes full of effort. They shared stories they'd never dared speak aloud before. About childhood fears, academic failures, his guilt, her loneliness. "You know what scares me most?" Calla said one night, curled beside him under a heavy quilt. "What?" "That we'll lose this. That life will pull us apart again." He touched her cheek. "Then let's build something it can't pull down." 3 months later, they co-founded a private marine research initiative. It was small, just a rented boat and 3 interns, but it was theirs. They split their time between Norway and coastal Spain, working with conservation groups, hosting visiting students, and publishing joint papers. They argued, of course. Calla hated how he left dishes in the sink. Reid hated how she kept a dozen browser tabs open at once. But they always came back to one truth. Nothing felt more right than them. One evening, after a successful coral reef study, Reid took her back to the same island where they met. It was abandoned now, no researchers, no funding, just the wind and the waves and their memories. They stood at the tidal pool, where they'd first spoken. "I used to think you were part of this island," Calla whispered. "I was," Reid said. "Until you gave me something to belong to that wasn't salt and stone." She smiled. "That's cheesy." He smirked. "Still worked." Then he dropped to one knee. Calla's breath hitched. I don't have a ring, he said. I could barely afford the trip back. But I have you. And I want to keep having you. Reid. I can't promise I'll always say the right thing. But I can promise I'll never walk away. Not from this. Not from you. Tears filled her eyes. You idiot. That a yes? She nodded, choking out a laugh. That's a yes. They married in a small coastal chapel in Portugal. 10 guests. A storm rolling in. A dress Calla bought secondhand. A cake Reid accidentally sat on. It was perfect. They danced in the rain, kissed beneath thunder, and wrote their vows in the margins of a biology journal. Years passed. They built a center for marine cognition in Greece, published 7 joint papers, adopted a stray Labrador named Echo, held hands through failures and triumphs. And every year, on the anniversary of that first sea lion rescue, they returned to the island. Once, as they stood by the tidal pool, a group of students on a field trip approached. Are you Dr. Vance and Dr. Ashford? One girl asked, awestruck. The couple who discovered emotional resonance in cephalopods. Calla smiled. We are. Is it true you fell in love during a rescue? Reid laughed softly. We fell in love slowly, but the rescue helped. Calla added, we saved a sea lion, and then we saved each other. In the end, theirs wasn't a love of grand gestures or fiery declarations. It was steady, earned, built from pieces of pain and wonder. Not a deep end they were pushed into, but an ocean they chose to swim in, together, forever.